Welcome back, friends. So let's take a little bit of time to contemplate what are some aspects of the union with God. What are some of the things that we can know with certainty by looking at our blessed Lord, um, body, and that sort of thing? I thought Taylor Marshall did a nice job summarizing Thomas Aquinas's Summa Theologiae and Contra Gentiles on the aspects of a resurrected body. And Aquinas will get this, of course, meditating on our blessed Lord. So there are four properties that are an outflow of the beatified soul, enjoying the vision of God's essence. We have impassibility. The glorified body will no longer suffer physical sickness or death. As St. Paul teaches regarding the glorified body in 1 Corinthians 15:42, it is sown in corruption, it shall rise in incorruption. We see that language of gardening there. Two, subtly meaning that we will have a spiritualized nature in the sense of a spiritual body, as did our Lord, as we learn in 1 Corinthians 15:42. It is sown a corruptible body, it shall rise a spiritual. It is a spirit-like body. We see that Christ's glorified body was able to pass through closed doors. Agility. The glorified body will obey the soul with the greatest of ease and speed of movement, as we read in 1 Corinthians 15:43. It is sown in weakness, it shall rise in power. That is, according to a gloss, mobile and living. St. Thomas Aquinas says, but mobility can only signify agility and movement. Therefore, the glorified bodies will be agile. We discern agility in our resurrected Lord's ability to bilocate and travel great distances in an instant. Remember the road to Emmaus, for example.
Right. Yeah.
Number 4, clarity. The glorified body will be free from any deformity and will be filled with beauty and radiance, as we read at Matthew 13:43. The just shall shine as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. And Wisdom 3:7, the just shall shine and shall run to and fro like sparks among the reeds. Here, clarity refers not being clear, but to being bright. St. Thomas Aquinas at Summa Contra Gentiles 486 summarize, thus also will his body be raised to the characteristic of heavenly bodies. It will be lightsome, clarity, incapable of suffering, impassible, without difficulty and labor in movement, agility, and most perfectly perfected by its form subtlety. For this reason, the apostle speaks of the bodies of the risen as heavenly, referring not to their nature, but to their glory.
Yeah, that is such an interesting thing, right? To think of the luminosity. Now, why? What about that? Is so profoundly, interesting. And I would think, from the standpoint of view from physics, a physicist would really be intrigued by that. Lumens, what is light? Is it energy? Is it a wave? Is it particles? What is it? And how that might then manifest itself in some real form, right? A realness, because it does seem to pertain in some way to that level of impassibility and agility, right? That light certainly moves, right? That we know that it travels, it can move, and we know that it can go through. Obviously, it can't go through the solids here per se, but certainly can pass through a window. I don't know. It's just very interesting, just from a scientific standpoint, those elements.
I agree with you. I remember being in the labs working with lasers and holograms and that sort of thing. And
Mhm.
I would just be stunned at the marvel of single frequency light, which is a laser. And it was something to behold. Yes, is it a wave or is it a particle? And the energy contained. And
But I mean, can you imagine then, so that, right, that you, all this that you're studying now, but being motivated by a rational mind? You know what I mean? Like it's not, it's so incredible, right? That the manifestation of the human body is going to have many of those properties that you study. And yet it won't be a thing. It will be you.
yes, yes.
I mean, it's really, I don't know. I mean, maybe a little too far afield from what we're contemplating here, but I do find that to be, I know we keep glitching, right? I do find that kind of fascinating, right? Just from the something to ponder, because we because those are graces that are in some manner going to be given to us, right? These things like these elements or topics, subject matter that you're studying, God made us to know him, love him, and serve him right here on earth so that we can be happy with him forever. So these things are not just, they don't have to be vain pursuits. They can be really particularly given over toward the contemplation of all the goodnesses that are going to be in store for us. Now, how will they manifest themselves? But all of these exercises are strictly for the purpose of being able to grow closer and closer and truly living in the presence of God, right? We want to be able to have, we use this analogy of the garden because it's tactile. I love that part in Dante, in when he's in heaven, and they do this, you know, the he's given these image of the spheres, where one ring is further away from the center, and Beatrice says, well, you know, it's not, this is what it's really like, but you are made of sensory organs, and so I'm presenting this to you in a manner that your senses are going to be able to understand. And that's sort of what we're doing with this concept of the garden, not for the sake, I mean, at the end of this, we don't think that anybody who follows this or reads this book is going to know how to put a seed in the garden and bring forth fruit in October. And if that's why you picked up the book, that might be, you know, to your eternal regret, or maybe to your eternal salvation, right? I mean, I don't know. So.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I think that's part of course, the one of our fascinations with the Shroud of Turin, which also
Yes.
I came across. You know, the more the study of the shroud continues, the more questions it brings forth, and so I haven't done a real deep dive into the science of it yet, but it looks like is showing a very brief video, if you will, of the first moments. I believe it is that of Christ as the life, the light, the intensity of energy uh,
Right.
resurrects his body. And those moments of his as he comes through the cloth, as it were, is actually recorded now. And so, with the technology we now have, we can we can see this movement
Just
through.
a progression through it. Wow, that's incredible, isn't it? I mean,
It,
really, it's astounding. It really is. You know, the more I think of the arrogance of Darwin, who thought that a single cell creature was simple, in the sense of not simple in the sense that God is simple, but simple in the sense that it didn't require, like, there, like, what, nothing's going on there, right? I mean, everything's happening at a more macro, you know, cellular level, like these, and it's so, you know, God just can't be outdone in generosity. I mean, so, you know, the human body, which requires millions and millions and millions of cells to bring forth, I mean, aren't we all astounded that one cell can do that? Like a one-celled creature can reproduce. And I mean, that to me is just astounding. And the more that we dive into science. And actually, you know, Karen, maybe that brings up an interesting point as to why now science is really under demonic attack, right? Because he can't prevent it from teaching truth. And
You
so
should-
consequently, he has to prevent it from teaching it all.
That's correct.
Just a
And
thought on that, yeah.
And that was my one one epiphany, oh, so many years, decades really ago, being in the lab with the dark and seeing the green light, that sort of thing. And it's like I'm looking around and go, how can anyone think this just sprung up
Right,
by
right, yeah.
accident? I
Yeah.
mean, just there's not enough.
Right.
You have to make a leap of faith to get to that point because the evidence is so obvious, at least it was to me.
Right.
And I'm glad you brought up demonic. We're at the top of our time, and that is where we go to the next conversation. Till then, friends, Fide Sadratio. Look at that.